I'm Dr. Anthony Harper here with William Federer, and he's got a great website, AmericanMinute.com, and it's great to have you join me today.
Well, thank you, Anthony. Great to be with you.
I think we're going to be talking a little about a lot of important issues regarding socialism. You know, we've seen a real advancement of socialism with the Democratic Party, and there's been a lot of criticism. President Trump has talked, and others have talked about the socialist makeup of our Congress and how that's advancing. So what would you like to address about the advancement of socialism that we see in our Congress, in our nation?
Well, Lenin said that the goal of socialism is communism. So he explained how it's a transition phase from capitalism to communism is socialism. It's not a permanent state, it's a temporary transition phase to get to communism. And socialism, according to FDR, was just a dictatorship. What do I mean? 1940, Franklin Roosevelt's talking about the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
Oh, okay.
Socialist republics, right? USSR, and it's run by Stalin. And FDR says the Soviet Union is run as a dictatorship, as absolute as any dictatorship in the world. So here's FDR saying this Union of Soviet Socialist Republics is a dictatorship. What's a dictatorship? It's a hierarchical system, very much like a pyramid. And so you have one person at the top, the party leader, the king, the pharaoh, the sultan, the chairman Mao, the caliph. It's a hierarchical system. You got one person at the top who calls the shots. And then there's the administrative layer, that's the Communist Party members, or they're the new royalty. They carry out the will of the person at the top. If they challenge him, they disappear. And then at the bottom of the pyramid are the subjects, the serfs, the peasants, the slaves. And so it's a pyramid hierarchical structure. And so this is the normal form of government for man. It's basically a gang dynamics, where you have a gang leader, you have a bully on a playground, you have an Indian chief, with military technology advancements, the gang leader can kill more people and gets more powerful, and it turns into the kings. And so when they say, well, socialism is great, everybody owns everything equally, it's like, no, somebody decides who lives in the nice house and who lives in the dumpy house. Well, whoever dictates who lives in the nice house and who lives in the dumpy house is eventually the dictator.
How's that playing out in the Democrat Party that we see now, those influences?
It is interesting, because it wasn't that long ago that the party was against these things. I mean, there's even quotes on YouTube of Bernie Sanders being against immigration because the unions didn't want cheap labor. So, I mean, we're seeing a change that's happened very, very quickly from the previous views. And the Democrat Party used to be in favor of states' rights, but now they want to run roughshod over states' rights and have power concentrated into the hands of fewer and fewer people in this pyramid structure, this hierarchical society, and they want to force their agenda on the rest of the country, not letting the people and the communities in the states decide what they want to have as their beliefs and so forth.
How is socialism being played out in the Republican Party on the other side?
Well, that's interesting. There's unfortunately the media sets the tone, and they have a lot of people to be elected. They want people to think nice things about them, and the media can say nice things or mean things, and so a whole lot of people cave to the media. It's very seldom you have someone with enough backbone that stands up. But it's interesting, socialism has a group dynamic to it. Everyone wants to be accepted in a group. Little kids want to get along and be accepted in a clique in school, wear the right tennis shoes and everything. And the Montesquieu, a French political philosopher, 1748, Spirit of the Laws, he says kings rule through honor and dishonor. It's a honor-shame culture. you do what the group says and the king dictates what's acceptable in the group, you're honored. And you don't do what the group says, the group gangs up on you. And in Islamic situations, will even kill you, right? If you leave the community, the ulma. And so it's a group dynamic. Interesting that the Bible, God calls us out of the group. And he called Israel out of Egypt. The word ecclesia, which is the Greek word for church, ek means out of, ecclesia means a calling. So Jesus says, I'm calling you out of you have to be willing to resist group dynamics and not be accepted by a group in order to follow me. And so this is the battle. So the Bible concepts give birth to individualism. So where the Bible is taught, you have the concept of the individual, that each person individually has a relationship with God, and even if the whole world is against them, they're accepted by God. So it's a fear and an honor and an acknowledgement of God. Whereas without that, all you have is the group, and you want to be accepted by the group. And if the group rejects you, you've lost all self-esteem, and that's what happens with these kids. They get their internet group, their social media group, and if they're rejected by that group, they lose so much self-esteem that some of them commit suicide.
I've heard people that actually try to tie Jesus to socialism. They're lying because the scripture really doesn't support that. As you said, it's calling out, focusing on the individual and that special relationship that he has with people individually. He's not calling for socialism at all. Right.
So the gospel talks about charity, where you give. Socialism takes, and they are the ones dispensing to the needy, not the individual. So the individual is robbed of the opportunity to be charitable. It's interesting, God gave commands to 5 groups. He gave commands to individuals, to families, to employers and employees, to church and government. Now the individuals to the commands to the individuals are to be generous, to love the poor, turn the cheek. If they take your coat, give them your shirt. All that. There's no command for the family to be generous. The commands to the family are husbands love your wives, children submit to your parents. The commands to the employers are worker, give an honest day's work, and employer, don't hold back the wages that are due to your employees. The commands to the church is commanded to be generous. And they would have orphanages and medical clinics and feed the widows and the poor. And historically, churches have birthed the entire hospital industry. That came out of the church. Prison ministry, the whole philanthropy, all these things, the university systems, education came out of the church. The government's command is the easiest. Protect the innocent, punish the guilty. There is no command for the government to take care of the poor. There's no command for the government to have health care or welfare or schools. That's the church's responsibility. So what's happened is the church has neglected its responsibilities and the government has usurped the responsibilities. So socialism is the government usurping the church's role. So when the early church, these people sold their property and they brought it to the feet of the apostles, they didn't bring it to the feet of Pilate. Hey, I'm going to sell my farm. I'm a Christian. I'm going to give all my money to Pilate. Here, Pilate, here's a little extra money for the Roman Empire to distribute. It's like, okay, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
No, they brought it to the church. So if you want to give away your money, you give it to the church. And the church, why is it important? The church wants to see people fulfill their God-given potential. The government doesn't. The government has, now let me explain. Every government program is run by people who want to keep their job. And so the temptation is for them to use their position to funnel the benefits of the welfare and so forth to those that can help them stay in power, and to withhold those benefits and even take away taxes from those that'll challenge their being in power. It turns into what's called the deep state. This huge, enormous bureaucracy of people whose fundamental goal is to keep their job. And they end up using the force of law to take away stuff from those that challenge them and funnel the stuff to those that will keep them in.
Now, for people who wanted to know more about what you might have written on this issue about socialism, they can go to your website.
Right.
You've got a lot of great information there.
Thank you, Anthony. My website is AmericanMinute.com. AmericanMinute.com. I send out a free daily history email. On the socialism thing, I go through, Lenin and Stalin and Hitler and the National Socialist Workers' Party, and I go through the hundreds of millions of people that were killed. Bloody stuff, and I go through all that, and but then I talk about how the gospel's the answer, and how the concept goes back to ancient Israel, that we're a people that are individuals covenanted together, getting rights from God and accountable to God.
The only answer, the biblical solution.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. It's always an honor to be with you.